First start the panel by having everybody introduce themselves. My name is Kim Bowie. I run the A&R department at Lost Highway Records, which is a division of Universal, and I've been doing A&R for about 26 years and have pretty much built my career working with artists whose careers pretty much live in the margins for the most part, and it's been a very interesting time, and we'll let David here take it from there.
I'm David Macias. I'm the president of 30 Tigers out of Nashville, and 30 Tigers is a company that helps independent artists some of whom have left the label system, and smaller label entrepreneurs put their records out with an infrastructure. We've got about currently a 9-person staff that help provide a lot of label services for various labels. So.
My name is Denby Auble. I'm the president and founder of Blue Corn Records out of Houston, Texas. We specialize in roots and Americana music. We're distributed by Warner ADA and have been going just for about 10 years now. And I think that's about that. I'm a musician myself and a fan deep inside.
I'm Logan Rogers. I own Lightning Rod Records, which is a Nashville-based label. Artists include James McMurtry and Jason Isbell. And before that, I worked the label out of Houston called Compadre Records, where I worked with Billy Joe Shaver and some other guys in the roots realm. And I also work with David Macias at 30 Tigers.
How you doing? My name is Gary Pachosa. Currently live in Nashville. I've been there about 25 years. Started engineering and then moved to production probably 5 or 6 years ago, and now I'm A&R at Sugar Hill Records and Vanguard Records.
And still producing.
Yes.
And producing some pretty amazing artists as well. So I'm just going to start by throwing a few questions out to the panel, but before I do that, in light of the topic of the day, I want to try to direct our focus more to the developing artists or the brand new artists. I think we can all pretty much see that the bigger an artist is, the more creative options that they have. So if you're Madonna, you can make a multi-million-dollar deal with Live Nation, or if you're AC/DC or the Eagles, you can do a deal direct with Walmart. If you're Prince, you can choose to release your record through a London newspaper. If you're Radiohead, you can decide to put your record up for free. But baby bands and mid-level acts don't always have that option. So we'd really like to try to keep our focus there. Obviously, we can talk about some of the creative options that the bigger acts have, but we'll just start with probably the most fundamental question that I think everybody wants to know, which is what are people looking for when considering signing an act, especially in the DIY era that we are in? So, David, I think I'm going to let you take that first.
Okay. Basically, what we look for primarily, because we only get compensated. The way our deals work is being that we're a service company basically for independent artists and labels. And the way we structure our compensation is that through our distribution deal with Red, we pay Red this much, and then we charge this much, and it's in that margin in which we make our money, and we don't charge any kind of monthly fees or anything like that. Mainly because when you're putting a record out, and you're trying to cobble together precious resources to hire the right publicist or be able to underwrite going on a tour. If you get a chance to open for a strong act, those resources, all of that comes at a cost, and we would prefer to leave more resources in the demand side of the equation, and then take our resource or take our wins on the back with the artists or the small labels that we work with. But because of that, when somebody approaches us about a deal, we have to have a pretty good idea of what that win is going to look like, on the end. And when we're approached by either acts or managers or attorneys, I have a handful of questions that I'll want to know, first and foremost. One is, what is your touring base like, and who books you? The live, for the type of music that we do well with, the live arena it's an imperative. You cannot, you can't do it without, touring. I mean, and I know in other instances it can be done with a hit song or something that works on a ringtone and all that, but that's not the world that we live in. So, we don't know how to do those things as well as others do. So. And then we look at what resources are available to the act. It's one thing if the band's got a really good regional base and a good booking agency, but if the resources aren't there to hire the right publicist who can really kick open doors and grow the career, then it's difficult to sort of get the vision on how this is going to grow from here to here. And we're really only interested in working with things that are going to to be able to grow. You don't need to necessarily be an artist with a track record when you walk in the door. Though probably about 75% of who we work with do have a pretty established track record. But the developing acts that we work with are all it's music that we really, really love, and it's also music that we can, through discussions with the manager and the artists, sort of see the vision of how this is going to work. Well, okay, you're going to be able to tour here, and you've got enough resources to be able to, to bring this publicist on board, and you've got this person who's managing you, who we really respect and knows, we know because we've worked with them before that they can kick doors open and. We get the vision for how we're going to reach that light at the end of the tunnel, and so for our particular business model, those are the things that we look at.
I'll certainly second much of what David said, but I think even more so, I'll emphasize the fact that once you get past, I love the music and it fits with the label. The very first question, and I've heard probably everybody up here say this at some point in time or the other, what does your itinerary look like? Are you able to tour? Do you have a track record? You may or may not have an agent, but it's probably rarer these days that you have a good touring schedule and a good touring base without having an agent. But that is hugely important, because whatever resources we can bring to bear, whether it's money for publicity and that kind of thing, you have to have something to work on. You have to have some events to put into the pipeline. So that's huge. And I think that today, heard on an earlier panel, there's so many options out there for the emerging artists to do the DIY thing with with MySpace and Facebook and Twitter, and being able to cobble together your own fan bases and that kind of thing. That really, that is one of the toughest first steps, but you're not going to get a buzz going, regionally or nationally, if you don't get it in your hometown. And I think that's just a big deal. If you can't get people to come out to hear you, once a week or twice a month, it's probably very unlikely that you're going to be able to generate a buzz 500 miles away. So that's a big deal from my perspective. And it also, we get lots and lots of submissions from artists, and I'm not sure that we've ever signed an artist based on a package that was sent to us. It's almost always that there's a buzz out there, and we hear from a manager or an agent or somebody, maybe another musician that says, "Man, you got to catch this act," and find somebody that has already started that first step and created a local buzz. So that's a big deal.
Logan, I would say that for you, you have every bit as much at stake for yourself as you do as your artists do. I'd say, would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. I have to be having my own record company. I have to be very, very conservative as far as choosing artists. I really leave the band breaking and signing unknown acts to major labels or big indies. I have to kind of hedge my bets a little bit on deciding in making A&R decisions by I don't know. It's like investing in a like .com stock, which may explode, or investing in like GE or something like that. And so I basically know roughly what an artist is going to sell, and I can set a budget for that. You know, I have to feel confident that I can put together a plan and be organized enough and cover all the bases so that hopefully they'll increase what they've been doing. But if they don't, I need to protect myself. So I can look at, have signed a couple of acts who have a history of sales, and so I can look at their sound scan, and I can put together a budget that fits as far as how much to spend on things like radio and publicity and marketing and advertising. So I can be sure that that I won't, you know, lose my company by signing someone that that the public may not be interested in. And I second what they've also said about touring. I've got 2 acts that play, you know, upwards of like 150 dates a year. So that keeps records going. That gives records legs. And so that is the, after the music, that's the second most important thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add to that because we're all looking for the same thing of musically compelling, you know, and something unique. It's got to have a story. I'm finding that out, you know, more and more, having spent most of my career, or, you know, 95% of it making records. Now that I'm signing acts, you know, there really has to be a story behind an act, you know, to really help sell it, help people, you know, how are people going to connect to this artist, you know, and to this music or to this song. You know, and I work in 3 different arenas, sort of, with Vanguard Records, doing A&R for them. You know, they're able to pick up a lot of acts that have been elsewhere. You know, we've got the Indigo Girls now, and Robert Cray, Levon Helm. So, you know, those are easy signings, fairly risk-free, and a lot of those are licensing deals. So there's not much risk for the record label. It's Sugar Hill. We do a lot more startup acts and roots acts. Mainly it's been bluegrass, but now we're having to take on other stuff like country. We've got this band Joey and Rory that's doing really well for us, and it's going to now allow me to sign some basic roots acts. And then on my own, production-wise, I work with you know, artists who don't have a deal, who've chosen not to go that route. And you know, my choice on taking on those people is the same as it is the label. You know, how much drive do they have? You know, how bad do they want this? How hard are they willing to tour? Do they have film and TV placements already? You know, what's their internet presence? So it's kind of it.
I just very quickly, as far as Lost Highway goes, Lost Highway's always had a fairly basic philosophy, which is look for artists who already have something going on, press-based, touring-based, sales-based. Those are a couple of core essentials to any act that we look at. And then, of course, after that, it's how distinctive are they? How compelling are they? What's the story? Everything that everyone here has said absolutely applies. But having said that, there are exceptions. We have taken on a couple of baby bands that come from scratch. It's a bigger risk, but if you know, in our attempt to try to have a balanced roster of the known and the unknown, because some of the more established acts aren't going to be on the roster forever, whether it's a Lyle Lovett or Ryan Adams or Lucinda Williams or Elvis Costello, we did 2 records on. Van Morrison, we did 2 records on. We don't have long-term deals with these artists. So our future is as dependent on what we can develop. So we have to take some risks for who the next Lucinda and the next Lyle and the next Ryan Adams will be. Not all of them are going to succeed. But that is the overall philosophy. But to sign a baby act that has nothing, no press base, no touring base, no sales base, is a very unusual exception for us. We have done it a few times. And I would say that even these days, it is becoming even more difficult to consider signing the baby act. So for any artist to find ways to prop themselves up out in the marketplace, as he said, locally, and touring, if they are, as Gary said, a lot of acts are somehow finding a way to get their music in the hands of music supervisors and ending up with songs on, Grey's Anatomy, and the next day they have the #1 downloaded song at iTunes, and all of a sudden all the big companies are calling the label going, "What's your name? I want to come see you live." But but those are the exceptions. Those are not things that you can count on. They are not things that you can depend on. So you have to depend on yourself and your own resources and your own wits and your own talent and your own creativity to get a leg up. And then hopefully you will get the attention of an independent label, an individual, an established independent, or in my case, a label that does have major label affiliation that can help shine an even bigger light on you. But you got to get a little bit of a light shined on yourself first, most of the time. And it's easier said than done. Even if you can find one person to be your advocate, whether it's a lawyer or if it's a manager, one person can make a difference in being an advocate for your cause. One little booking agent can make a difference. So you don't have to have all of those resources in place, but even a few of them that can help open up a few more doors, it matters. And my philosophy is I'll work as hard as my artists do. And it does take work. Don't wait for anyone to do it for you. Because if you do, well, yeah. I think he had a few more things to add.
Yeah, well, actually, one thing that I think Denby and Kim both mentioned were attorneys. I think that if you're trying to sort of find a way to kind of bust through, I think having a good music business attorney, and do your homework just because they're a music business attorney. Ask them, kind of, what kinds of clients they've worked with in the past. Try to find people that believe in what you do, that have, at least some sort of a track record for, helping bands accomplish the types of things, or acts accomplish the types of things that you want to accomplish. Because it can be, an advocate. There's, I think there's all acts that, that we work with. Kim was talking about film and television. There was an act that we, wound up working with. We wound up managing him. We put his records out. His name's Matthew Perryman Jones, and it was just a production. A friend of mine produced the record. Wanted me to meet with the artist just to see, what was the, what we thought, or give any advice or whatever. And I heard it, and it was just one of those things that was just like, I'll manage this guy, and we've just kept our head down, and he's done, tons of film and television, work. He's been on Grey's Anatomy. He's making a six-figure income now, based on just film and television, and he's kept ownership over what he's doing, and he's, we've given him help in making sure that all the things that he needs to do to be on iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So it can happen, but sometimes it's just one person who knows, enough and will go knocking on doors, but has the credibility to, get the attention of, any of these people on the panel that can, help. Make more things happen. I just think that's really important, and so.
And I think one thing I wanted to add to this, and everyone, please feel free to add to this because I'm sure we've all had our our idiosyncrasies to this end. But submissions, when you're trying to get your music on people's radar, MySpace is great because it's an opportunity for any of us to get a quick impression. What I don't have, and I can only speak for myself, is I don't have as much time in the day that I think some people might think I have to download an album and that doesn't have any song titles and doesn't come with any information. I get way more emails than I know what to do with that have an MP3 attached or have a link to an album to download. Streaming is the most valuable resource to my ears to be able to just one click and I can get a quick impression. If I love something, I'll email back and say I want more. Yeah, is anyone?
But you don't want a link, or you don't want to download.
Well, a link to a download of a whole album requires time, and time I don't always have a whole lot of. And a lot of times these links come without song titles, I find it to be something that I end up having the least amount of time for. But to click to a MySpace page, that's easy.
Yeah,
Click to a website that has streaming music, that's easy. That helps me get a quick impression.
I tell everybody to submit a MySpace link.
Yeah.
Just flat out.
And also, if you do have a CD that you send, you don't need to worry about like putting it in fancy packaging or flowery folders or anything like that, or 8x10 photos.
Although the macadamia nuts that I got last week from
Those
Hawaii
are great.
were very nice.
But yeah, it's unnecessary. Most of those things are not held on to. So just FYI.
Yeah. But something simple. An image, a brief bio, less hyperbole. Something that really just gives you basic information: where you're from, how long you've been a band, and if there are any highlights, like people you've toured with, who your booking agent might be. Statistics are good, but they're not essential. Basic fundamental information is if somebody loves something, they're going to be calling you asking you for more.
Yeah, a big packet of bios or reviews, or that's not really of much use to me. But contact information,
Yes.
on the CD, because all that stuff gets separated.
Yeah.
There's so many things
Yeah.
on the desk that just to make sure that everything I need is written on the CD.
So another question that I wanted to toss out to the panel is the types of deals that you guys are making. You don't have to be specific in terms of dollars, but dollar ranges. Are they 50-50 deals? Are they licensing deals? Are they traditional artist deals? Do they involve ownership or master reversions? I think everybody sort of has different approaches. 360s, is that something you're doing? Gary, you want to start first?
All different sorts of deals. Like we just did our first 360 deal at Vanguard. Like I said, at Vanguard, there's a lot of licensing, or distribution deals. Down to Sugar Hill, where we're mostly doing traditional deals, but they're getting shorter and shorter. Like with a new act, you want a couple of records, but it's definitely come way down. But I'd say a new act now is usually one guaranteed record and 3 options, from two to 3 options on that. Because if we're going to put money into the artist and build the artist, we want, you want the follow-up records to take advantage.
What's the dollar range on a brand new act, like 5 to 50?
I'd say from 15 to 40 at Sugar Hill. Most right in the middle, 20, 25. With escalating budgets depending on, how sales go for your following record, that your budget goes up. But, sales are still dropping. So, budgets aren't going up. They're coming down. And we're facing with, we want to continue with an act, but I mean a lot, a decent percentage of the acts, the sales are not matching up to what the next budget is supposed to be. So we'll have to go back and say we want to continue working, but we've got to all be realistic here about the budget, and we've got to spend less this go around in order for it to work for us.
Are some people coming to you offering you records for free?
Yeah, and and that's you try and talk to them about making sure that it's the best thing for them. If you're, I'm a fan of the music first, and it's usually I've been around this kind of music for a long time, so I know these people I'm working with. They're all good friends, or I've worked with them in other capacities in the past. So I'm always trying to find the best thing for them too. And so some people, you really just have to say, you're really going to be better off on your own. You're going to make more money out there if you're willing to put in the work, promoting yourself, because that's what that really involves. To do it yourself is putting in. All the people I know that are really successful at it, the Matthew Perryman Jones, Katie Herzig is a girl I work with, is a great example of. She makes a really good living now doing it all herself, but she's doing it through, she's kind of funding a lot of her touring by her film and TV placements. So that's a good place to go, that you don't need a record deal to get a film or TV placement.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, sometimes it's almost preferred that, that they almost prefer independent artists, because a lot of times they're wanting to clear these things super quickly, and sometimes the big company bureaucracy of having to go through attorneys and looking over things, it slows things up. And if they can find something that they want, and with Matthew, he owns his publishing. He doesn't even have an admin deal, so he owns everything outright, and it's just one phone call if the song works, and it's like, okay, we'll do it, and then 8 weeks later we get a check, so it's a good thing.
Right. For the artist, it becomes supplemental income.
Yeah, but the bottom line is we're doing every kind of deal, that there is, and it's just wide open to whatever kind of whatever we can do to make it work. Do
you find that it's every deal is different depending on the artist and the music and their needs?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But we just don't have set guidelines anymore. Every 6 months, if we did have an idea about what level of artist that we can do a licensing deal on or not, that changes. A couple months later, it's like let's lower the bar there a little bit, or take an act that's maybe only selling 20,000 records and look at doing a licensing deal with them instead of before maybe it was like 50,000. So it just depends on the artist.
I don't have a standard label deal, but typically, since I'm working with established artists, I am going to lean towards a license deal where I have controlled the record for a certain amount of time, and then and I usually am not involved in the actual recording process. Typically, they'll have a finished project that they'll bring to me, and we'll work out some sort of advance to kind of get the weight off their shoulders for a little while, and then we'll work out a deal where we split the proceeds on the back end. And one thing I am insistent of is worldwide rights, just because, the market's shrinking in the U.S., and so I need to go out and be able to find new territories for these acts and to help offset my investment.
We do basically two kinds of deals, obviously with several subtle changes, but either licensing deals or recording contracts. For us, the licensing deal sometimes has a little bit less risk on the front, obviously, so we may be more willing to look at signing a band or a songwriter to a licensing deal if they come with a finished product that we think works for us and is decent quality. We obviously don't have that front-end recording cost to be dealt with, and then typically we'll work out the length of period of time that we have control of the recording, and like Logan, we'll have a split of revenue on the back end. The recording deals for us, a lot more commitment, especially depending on how mature the artist is and what stage. I mean, they're making some great records these days for pretty cheap in studios all over the place. But if we get to a major studio in L.A. or Nashville or whatever, it's got a big budget. Obviously, we have to scratch our heads. It's getting tougher and tougher these days to recoup with the shrinking physical sales. And it really is a moving target. I don't know about you guys, but we're watching the physical sales just dwindle rapidly over the past couple of years. Yes, digital is climbing almost as rapidly, but it's not taking up the slack. And so everybody, I think, at the label side and, gosh, everybody in the business is sort of looking to other income streams to try to prop up the business. And so I think we will see that model change. I think that labels will be asking for a little bit more than we have in the past to make the economics work, from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit different in that, we never, most of the deals, well, all the deals that we do, we never are in control of the master, from the beginning. I mean, we really encourage the act to think of themselves as the entrepreneur, because they are, or the, the small, label. And so as a result, generally we're sort of coaching them through pulling their resources together to be able to do it, on their own, if it can be done. And so, but we, within the last couple years, for a long time, because I'm very risk averse, we never did any kind of advances or anything like that. But that's actually changed in the last couple years. We've done, we're now in the position, we had a project. I don't know if y'all know who Patterson Hood is, who's the singer of the Drive-By Truckers, and we did his solo record, and due to some cash flow issues, the fact that we could actually fund publicity and manufacturing and do all that stuff, we were able to contribute about $40,000 to helping him pull all of this together, and that's what enabled him to put that out. And we recoup with first monies in, and with an act like that, that there's no way that we were not going to recoup all of that money. And so it was just providing enough gas to get the engine to run. But he, from the beginning had full ownership over his master, and never didn't own it. So any ancillary income that comes in from any kind of international deals or film and TV licensing and all that all goes to him. And so it was just a matter of us just being able to to do that, to do more deals. So.
Because Lost Highway is affiliated with Universal, which is a major label, and because we are a signatory to the union, my budgets are inherently more. I envy these guys sometimes, but we end up adding anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 more to our budgets just to cover union costs. So it's a very different structure, but it doesn't mean that I still can't get creative with deals. One of the exceptions of signing a baby band, a year ago I signed a group called Black Joe Lewis and the Honey Bears. It was kind of a different signing for us, but I was able, first I have to sell the band within the company before they can then sell without. And so part of my job is to, just as a manager or a lawyer is to be that passionate advocate for that artist within the company, the very company that I work for. And if I can persuade them, if I can persuade my boss, if I can make it make sense to everybody that I work with, because our company is too small for me to be selfish just to sign something just because I love it. Oftentimes that becomes a very important consideration. So with this particular act, I wanted to pursue it. I sat down with the manager and I said, how can we create a deal that serves this band's needs and gives us the chance to work this record for at least a year? So we came up with a dollar amount for tour support, and we said, how far can we get on this amount? And we calculated they could get 6 months to a year on that much tour support. and then we determined how much we could pay towards the dollars and the musicians, covering the union and also giving them just the tiniest bit of money for a van. And this is an 8-piece band, so you know, they were willing to do, you know, 2 hotel rooms and 1 van, and I mean, the way that everybody else, probably any artist in this room, has to do it. It is hard, but the management was willing, the band was willing, we were all on the same page. We made a smart deal. We're in a position to not get pear-shaped at the end of this release and find ourselves not being able to make a second record because we spent too much. So as we're all having to address a business that is still a billion-dollar industry, but is dramatically diminished compared to even a couple of years ago, there's still a lot of opportunity for everybody to win and to succeed in this business doing the thing that they love, which is making music. It all starts there. So I'm going to use that as a segue into the next part, which is as everyone in our business is touched, I mean, lawyers, engineers, producers, record company people, bands, managers, everyone's income is shifting. It's what the market would call a correction, and that's okay. It's just how do we move forward? And I think one of the questions that, and I certainly don't have any answers, but how do you put value back in the song and into the music so it just doesn't become fodder for advertising and T-shirts and, you know, that. So anybody have any thoughts on that? They want to step in? Go ahead.
I think the producer should answer that question.
Boy, I don't have any idea. I mean, because to me, I mean, there still is value in that, but we're seeing that go away. I mean, all the talk is about, you know, about music being, you know, free, and you know, we're not there yet. You know, but it's getting closer and closer. Songwriters, you know, aren't making you know, the living that they were, and publishers are really struggling. So it's you know, it's hard for everybody. I mean, if you've got a job right now at a record label, you're doing the job of 2 or 3 people. You know, I mean, it's stressful. It is not fun. You know, and you can't, you know, you can't take risks, which is a real disappointment to me. You know, I think if you have something at the label that's earning money, you know, and you're flush, then you get to take risks. But right now, that's just really hard for every label. And just like we're talking about, like how many new acts will you take on this year? How many baby acts will you take on in a year? Like 1 or 2?
I'm fighting for 2 right now. I'll be happy if I get 1. But real quick, because I don't want y'all to walk out of here feeling truly depressed. I will say one thing that I have seen that I love is when an artist gets on stage and puts the value in their music and says, you know, buy my record, you know, support me because I'm here. I'm putting my heart out on the line for you all, and I think that's part of it. You know, certainly there are outlets out there that are helping to, for example, the telecommunications industry. I mean, you know, mobile businesses are building their business off of promoting music as being part of their content. That's good. That's good for us.
Yeah.
You know, it's just more dots have to be connected.
Yeah.
Well, and as an artist, you shouldn't be depressed because it's a really exciting time. You know,
Truly.
you have control. You know,
Yeah.
we're in a little bit of trouble. You know, but as a you know, the artist, it's just up to how much, you know, how much drive and ambition you have in addition to your talent. So.
And as an artist, you have the ability now more so than ever to get in touch with your fan base, and it's not as, you know, it's through things, even like through social networking or Twitter or whatever. I mean, you can become a real person to your fan base, where the where someone is less likely to want to give away your music for free or go to Pirate Bay or whatever and steal your music if they have some sort of tangible, well, loosely tangible relationship with you and see you as a person rather than a hit.
No, and I think the big point that I always take is people are just as passionate about music today as they've ever been, and that's the key. And as these guys have said, it does get easier and easier. There's an artist in Austin that has done very well for herself, and she's an early adopter of the social networking and keeping a database up and keeping a running commentary with her fans, to the point that I think the last 3 records she's made, Terry Hendricks, she's had pre-funded because she said, hey, out to the fan base, I want to make a new record. If you want to send me $10, I'll send you the first copy signed when it comes out. And she's had these, pre-funded herself for years. I mean, but that's as a lot of hard work to keep that up and keep that relationship going. But notes from the road, anything that you can do to keep your fan base informed and feeling like they're part of the act is a huge thing. So.
Yeah, and there's companies out there now. I did a panel yesterday in Nashville with this CEO of a company called Nimbit, which is a great resource to be able to have tools to keep current with your fan base, to have ways of selling widgets to sell right off of MySpace, things like that, where you can really take quite a bit of control in terms of monetizing it in the absence of a deal. And I would really recommend looking at those. But one thing about the sort of the value of the song, I don't know. I think it's kind of it's kind of up to the to the artist. I think largely in terms of how their music is put out there and gets used. And I think a lot of music. I mean, there's a lot of great. There's a lot of music that's being made and produced strictly for commercial consumption. There's a lot of music that is, just completely art-driven. I mean, we work with a label called Infinity Cat out of Nashville, and I was talking to the proprietor of that. They have a band called had a band called Be Your Own Pet that sort of imploded or exploded or ceased to exist in some form or fashion. Yeah, something bad happened. I don't know. But anyway, but they got, they were asked to offered a 6-figure deal to have one of their songs used in an American Eagle commercial, and they were like, no, we're not going to do it. And we're not even going to think about doing it because we don't wear their clothing, and we don't want to. That's not something that we want to be associated with. And they didn't even think twice about it. And so I mean, if you don't necessarily, you can kind of control how how your music is out there. But I mean, personally, like, I love Santa Gold. Her songs are on commercials everywhere. I love that Lights Out song. I get happy every time that Bud Light Lime commercial comes on. It's great. And that's actually how I found out about her music. So, it's kind of, there's just no, I think you just sort of have to do what's right for you or do what you feel is best. And I think the idea of, commercials or no commercials or TV or no TV or whatever. It's just like, if it feels right and it fits what you do, do it. And if it doesn't, don't compromise yourself. If you have a doubt on it, about it, then, maybe you should question it. So.
Yeah, it used to be radio was king, but I think the great news is that artists can have very healthy careers selling anywhere from 10 to 100,000 to 200,000 records and do really good business. And I think it's possible for more artists to have that business. It's not necessary to knock it out the park anymore and to have the big hit. Certainly our label survives on those kinds of artists, where it's not about a radio hit. But the other thing is we use the same tools that you do. It's just by the time you maybe have achieved a certain platform, or by the time it hits our radar, we then hopefully can employ more manpower and a little more resources into building on what you've already built. And it really does become a team effort. And the other thing that I would say is that every song matters, because people can just go and buy one song. That's easy. So the more particular you are about the songs that you allow to get out there, whether they're fun and of the moment, or whether they're very serious and earnest, or whatever kind of music that you work in, be discriminating, and or take risks, but you know, have a point of view. You know, try to have something to say, and really express yourself in the best way you can, and just make it all matter. You know, which I figure you all do anyway. So, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Well, but you know, yeah, actually, to reiterate that point, one act that I now manage, the first time I heard one of her albums, there were some moments of just transcendent brilliance on that record, but there were a few things that were not transcendent or brilliant by any means. And you know, my comment to her was, you know, you took a 4.5-star record and you made it a 3.5-star record by, you know, by your, and you know, when I asked her about the songs, it was just kind of like, well, I don't know, it just sort of seemed like it was, I mean, she, you know, it just sort of like was something that her producer kind of talked her into, because her producer's a musician, and it seemed like there was a good, you know, groove on their thing or whatever, and it just was not, you know, it was, you know, but it's sort of like when you think about, you know, those albums, when you think about trying to sort of break through the din of noise that's out there, because you've got, you know, you're competing. I mean, last year there were 105,000 records that were released that scanned at least one copy. So you're fighting with a lot of artists for attention, with the press and all that stuff. And sometimes if you let your guard down, and you know, somebody doesn't do a review, or gives a review to something that is uniformly brilliant as opposed to occasionally brilliant, that act is going to be the one that breaks through. They're going to promote Arcade Fire, and they're not going to promote your group. So, so just to reinforce her point. So.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else to add on that?
Agreed.
I'm out of questions. Does anyone have any from the audience? Because we'll take advantage of it. We'll start with you first. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that just sort of depends on if they've been on another label. If you're a brand new artist, are you a new artist? I mean, for a brand new artist, you're really kind of looking initially at, you know, MySpace hits, you know, and dates, and those are the first things, you know. If you're looking at an act who's been on another label, I mean, you're always eventually asking, you know, and pretty quickly, you know, how many records have you scanned? And it just that just depends, you know, on how much, you know, if it. Oh, you know, if you mean, you know, somebody, if they're doing it on their own, if somebody's done, you know, 8,000 records, you know, completely on their own out of the trunk of their car, you know, or at gigs, that's really good. Yeah. So yeah, it just depends on how long somebody's been out and doing it, and you know, if somebody's done those kind of numbers in, you know, in 6 months, you know, you're really impressed.
Good.
In terms of units?
Mm-hmm. I think anybody who's just getting started, who has not put out a record yet, or maybe has only put out an EP, that's a brand new act who's starting from zero. Yeah, yeah.
And more established, I mean, they have released a few through record companies or whatever, and and have at least some national presence, some national touring base,
Yeah.
and yeah. So, but both my acts can tour coast to coast and internationally. So
Yeah.
that's
I
what
think
I
if
mean.
you had, a brand new act that's putting out a record all by themselves, I think if they were able to sell 1,000 to 2,000 units just in their own backyard, that's very healthy. That's really good. That's respectable. But if that was their third record, probably not so much. You would hope that you'd see some growth.
And additionally, from record sales, just ticket sales are
Yeah.
as good of a barometer of.
Yeah, and I think what Gary said is also honestly quite accurate, which is the views on their MySpace page and those kinds of hits. I mean, all those things have a lot of value in terms of who they're reaching and how they're reaching them. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're selling out shows in your hometown and maybe a few other towns, then you kind of start to be interesting.
And that's, one of the things that, when we're talking about booking, I mean, that's why one of the, the main, in fact, even to the point of actually entering into business relationships with some of them where we're actually working with booking agencies to that degree. Because the thing is, they've got their finger on the pulse. They know when somebody has grown from 50 to 250 to 450 in, who's gone in 8 months from, playing at this small room in New York to selling out the Bowery Ballroom. And those are the kinds of things where you want to sort of catch them on their way up. And these are the people, the booking agencies are the sort of the front line, they're the line of first attack. And so that's one reason why I think it pays to have an agency, if you can. And that's the hardest thing in the world to get, I know. But, but you can also, look at the baby acts. Do your homework, get on blogs, look and see what acts are, being written about, who's booking those people, do your homework and find out for the type of music that you do, who's working with those acts at the underground, baseline level, and just try to, bake them some muffins and go and meet them or whatever.
Yeah, I think
macadamia nuts,
yeah.
I hear, are good. So.
I think some good examples. You were talking about selling CDs out of the back of the car. When we first signed Ruthie Foster, she did have a booking agent, but when I saw her, I think she was playing in front of 8 people, which is a huge talent, and they'd sold 5,000 pieces out of the trunk in 6 months. So there's no SoundScan record. There's no real statistics to work with, but it's obvious talent, and the fact that she had been really selling like hotcakes just off the stage. So I mean, a lot of ways to impress folks.
Definitely, and something I'll get to you in a second, but something else that I'm reminded of as well, and this is not for every artist, but for some artists, this becomes part of their means to survive. But there's an artist down here, Helen, who is a songwriter, and she's also an artist. She does both. She has the ability to write songs and get them cut by other people. I don't know if you've done it with the aid of a publisher or just through relationships. Publisher, yeah. So she's good hands there. So, but so songwriting is as valuable as being an artist, and can also be another outlet. Some people are just blessed to be able to write a number of songs that are not necessarily for them as an artist, but might be perfect for some country act or some soul act, or but for themselves they write alternative pop music. You never know, but as an artist, focus is generally a good thing. But I think the lady back there in the black shirt, you had a question? Congratulations. That's good.
My question is this. You can't really get an emerging indie artist into the William Morris agency for booking. therefore you got me that does all the legwork, all the phone calls. I take care of an 8-piece band. We're here today. We're actually showcasing this Saturday at the Music Valley Club. So anyway, my question is this: we're ready to move to the next level. We've already saturated Northwest Louisiana. We've already did our first CD. They have a manager. We've been to Nashville. We've worked with Lonnie Wilson Opera, very and so we're trying to go to the next level with what we can. We're going to start a 2010 summer tour next summer, and we're just going to regional to it from Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and we're going to come back. So how do you get the reputable booking agents for the indie artists that you can trust, or even the talented?
I think that if you put it this way, if you have, I mean, the booking agencies deal with these venues and these clubs, and if you're packing it out, then word's going to get back. I mean, we just had one of our acts who started. I mean, when I first got on this this artist, his name's Aaron Watson, and he does really well regionally in Texas. He's they've built an amazing thing. And nobody wanted to book him in the beginning, and his manager just, did it, and then they got some small regional thing out of Austin to do it, and but they've just worked and built it and built and built it. Now it's taken, 6 or 7 years, but he's now doing, grossing $1.5 million a year on the road, and Paradigm is like, oh, I mean, when they came to Nashville, CAA wanted to book him. Paradigm wanted to book him. They went with Paradigm. There was somebody else, major. It'll take some patience, but just go out there and build and make each of those shows work. And when you've got venues that are, that are good, solid, reputable venues.
Do we really need that at this point? We're opening for Jack Ingram. We've already opened
Yeah.
for Jane
No.
Paul, Kevin Fowler.
No.
Right.
Yeah, you're doing exactly what you should do. Yeah.
Do I really need that, or am I doing okay?
It sounds like you're doing okay.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
And another thing too is Walmart. You can't just take for sound scan. You can get your UPC code, but you can't really take it in Walmart unless you have people there. Now, my MySpace, we have 44,000 plays for emerging indie artists.
Yeah.
44,000 plays. And we sell a lot off of there.
Yeah.
But we sell most of our stuff at clubs, which is not sound scan. We've got at least 200 to 500 records a night or at each show. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you can actually get. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're doing fantastic. You're doing everything right. Right on.
But you can sound scan those, your club sales.
Yeah.
What? No, you've got. I mean, you have to pay some money to Nielsen, and there's a form you have to fill out, and you have to get the club owner to sign it, and you got to do some machinations. But you can get those reported to
Yeah, every
to
Thursday
SoundScan.
they get faxed in, and
Thursday
it will
morning.
get tabulated.
So.
And that's really important. You got to scan because that's your
Yeah.
calling card to the label. I mean, everything is based.
and so that's kind of hard too because everybody's like, well, can we get it at Walmart? And we're actually we just got back from Nashville working with David May at Song City Studios in Nashville. That's where we've got 5 songs already cut, and we're still working on the other for our second CD. So, I'm just kind of wondering, am I at that point where I really need to worry about going to Walmart yet, or SoundScan or this and that, or I say, well, you believe me when I tell you, look, we sell 2 to 500 records a night.
Well, one thing is, I mean, you may, in fact, be at the point where, Walmart could sell some of your stuff, but the problem is that Walmart's business is shrinking. I mean, they cut their floor space for music.
Yeah, and mine can't, we
Yeah.
can't compete against Taylor Swift.
Well, and to be honest with when they've shrunk their floor space down to what they've shrunk it down to, you are competing with Taylor Swift. And even though they could potentially sell some of your CDs, they're only going to take on a certain number of titles, to deal with because of limited space and limited open to buy dollars and stuff like that. So, I mean, you really almost have to get to the point where you're really And then that, to Gary's point about making sure that all that stuff gets scanned, because if you can go to, to somebody like my company or whatever, or a label, and show that you've scanned, 8,000 units on your own through venue sales that are, verified by SoundScan and all that kind of stuff, then you've got a really compelling case to arm somebody to go into Walmart and say, hey man, you're missing the boat here. This band, Dixie's Tradition, they're like the next big thing and whatever. And,
I'm sorry, y'all. My next question is this. Kurt Warrior. Y'all know who that is?
Who, sorry?
Kurt Warrior. Very straight. Okay. Anyway, we've kind of been talking with him. What do you get? What does it mean when they say they're good, but we don't have room on the roster? Does that know?
Yes.
That's a broad one. I mean, for me, sometimes that is the truth. I can't tell you how many times I come across things that I truly love, but we have 11 acts on a roster. We are not big. We don't sign a lot. I can't sign everything that I want. I'd say that if they're just saying that it's good, that's one thing. If they're saying they love it, but they just can't do it, that would probably be a little more encouraging. So sometimes, yeah, I'd say they're probably being fair, and it probably is good and really good and maybe even great, but it's just the opportunity, as Gary was saying earlier. I mean, it is disappointing sometimes. I'm sure he's been there. I've been there. Well, I really love something. I really want to sign it. I really want to pursue it. I can't. I have to pick my battles carefully. So certainly, the more ammunition you can give somebody, the better. But
Well, right. Thank you for that.
yeah.
I think it's true, too, because the American Idol stuff that we see today. I know when
Yeah.
I was a emerging country music artist wanting to be in the 90s, they didn't have the visual aid. I remember recording 14-song cassette tape. It was very hard. So, the technology we have these days, and what's at our fingertips, everybody wants it overnight, and they think
Yeah.
that y'all can just do whatever you want to, and I understand you can't do that. So, thank you for all your
Yeah.
input.
Good luck. You're doing great. Anybody else?
Yeah, you are doing great. It's not about Walmart. If you're selling, I mean, are you guys making money on the road? Are you profitable?
Yes. Now, my boys will go and sing for free to pay the band,
Yeah.
just to be seen. So,
Yeah. You.
Yeah, I just want to know about MySpace, where you discount it. I mean, to what extent? I mean, my last record I mastered Abbey Road, I had 16 professional musicians on it. I put it on MySpace, it sounds like a recording gallery. It spreads the shit out of the sound. I'm in my car, but on MySpace I'm going, I don't like this record.
You know what? It's fun. I guarantee you've got a lot to say. I'll just say that I'm one of those people that, if nothing else, because consumers are getting used to hearing things in that tinny MP3 quality sound. Sometimes it also depends on the speakers that it's coming through. You have less control over how and when and where and through what people are listening to music, but at least start with the best possible sound you can, because it will only get diminished from there. But I'm reasonably happy with the speakers that I have that I listen to music through MySpace with, but I also understand that it's probably a little bit brighter and crispier than it really is.
You're aware, because I tend to say,
Yeah.
here's my stuff, but it's crap here, so go to the other
Yeah.
side and you hear a much
Yeah.
stronger version of this track, which I know people like. Still MP3,
Yeah.
it sounds good, but it's 96K compressed stuff that they put on MySpace. It's wonderful.
And as an A&R tool, I mean, it's good enough,
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, it's really disappointing to hear it played back there, but for my A&R uses, it's enough. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
I'll know whether or not I want to hear more,
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for Gary, but when we've done studio work and when you're just really working hard on a really nice set of mixing speakers or mastering speakers for that matter, usually a lot of studios still have a pair of crummy old Yamahas or something to listen to make sure that it'll still sound good in your car. I mean, yeah.
And I think Glenn Schick in Atlanta actually has a car inside the studio where that they play the music through the speakers just to see how it sounds.
Yeah, and I mix on, I've got 3 different sets of speakers I listen on when I'm mixing, but lately, I mean, I spend, more time on my computer speakers, the same computer speakers that I have in the house, an external set with subwoofer, but I have that in the studio as well, because that's where I listen to music. I'm in front of my computer listening to music, in the office, as pathetic as that is, so.
Yeah. Well, I worked for Chris Blackwell for many years, and he always had this simple philosophy. If you're buying, listen to it on the shittiest speakers possible, because that's how most people listen. If you're selling, play it on the best possible speakers you can. So, and I agree with him, so, yeah.
One more. I think we got time for one more question.
Yep. Anybody?
Are you raising your hand, Brad?
I do.
Oh, please.
If everybody, if this panel is going to happen 6 months from now, what do you think would be different from as you sit here today?
More options. That would be my first response to that. I think all the tools that are available, there's just going to be more of them, and that means more dots to be connected to make one sale. And I think that's what it comes down to, truly, how many impressions you can make. So every tool that you have at your fingertips, use it, and use it to the best that you possibly can. More isn't better, but how it's used is essential.
Can I just add to that? I think again, there's the distribution channels are so wide and varied and multiplying every day. I mean, you used to get a distribution statement and physical sales, add them up, over and out. But now there's pages and pages of, downloads, streams, ringtones, and that's with mobile content that's going to get, we're chasing pennies around, but I still think that's what you have to do to make things up, and that's certainly, and I'd see everybody trying to broaden their reach. Our distributor recently came up with a new licensing group that another 15 people to help try to squeeze a little bit more out of the content, and I think that it's absolutely right. There's just going to be more choice and more avenues to chase. Yeah,
and just to be clear, although we're sort of representing the record company, we're not just that, and the abilities for any artist to get signed can come through management. It could be, he's a full-service business. It can be distribution. It can be management. It can be label. They're just different outlets. And it's not necessarily just record companies, but it starts with the music first. It starts with the artist first. None of this exists without that, period.
And I do want to say one thing that is not germane to any question that's been asked, but I think I always like to impart this at every panel. Just remember that when you're out there building whatever your team is, consumers only become aware of something after being hit with it with multiple impressions. Any advertising agency will tell you that. I even read a book, a biography recently, and that P.T. Barnum figured in, and even he was talking about 7 impressions before consumers became aware of what was going on. So I always like to impart that because I think it's helpful when you're out there trying to build, whether it's in your town or it's regionally or it's nationally, to try to come up with a plan that through all the mediums that are out there, and they're expanding rapidly, but through all the mediums that are out there, how are you going to collectivize enough impressions within with a targeted audience, whether it's an indie rock fan base or a country fan base or whatever? How are you going to collectivize enough impressions so that people are like, oh, Dixie's Tradition, I get it now, finally, so at any rate.
Nice way to bring it back around. Thank you, everybody, so much. I think we are done, and thanks to this great panel.